Welcome to the Center for Rural Development. My name is Lonnie Lawson and I'm the CEO here at the Center, and we're thrilled to have you here today. And what an absolutely gorgeous day the Lord has given us today for such a great event. Thank you all for being here. Before we start the actual program, there's a few folks that I really do want to recognize. Sheriff Todd Wood and his group, and all of the motorcycle escort that brought the group in yesterday. That was just really amazing. I got an email that it was going to happen, so I went out and watched it, and it was just pretty amazing. 50 motorcycles in front, about 50 motorcycles behind, the police escort front and back, and the trailer, and it was just pretty amazing event. So a shout out to those folks. The American Legion Post 38 Honor Guard, these guys have just been absolutely amazing to work with as always, and we just really do thank those folks. And a special thank you to Nathan Mick and Jan Scruggs for making this event possible today. So I really do, if you would give those guys a round of applause real quick. And before we do the presentation of colors, let me tell you who is on stage with us so that you kind of have an idea. On my far left is Mayor Eddie Girdler. Next to him is Judge Barty Bullock. Next is Ken Lucas. And obviously Congressman Rogers, who all of you know. On my far right is Claude Davis, who will be singing the national anthem. Next to him is Clarence Floyd. Next is General Dan Cherry, Nathan Mick, and Jan Scruggs, as I talked about. At this time, if you would, please rise for the presentation of colors by the Southwestern High School JROTC and Somerset American Legion Post 38 Honor Guard, the singing of the national anthem by highly decorated Vietnam veteran Claude Davis, and the Pledge of Allegiance by Somerset Mayor Eddie Girdler.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Attention. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order! Arm! Outward! Face! Forward! Arm!
Good morning. My name is Claude Davis, and I didn't expect to do this morning, but got a little story to tell you that is true. First off, I am very humbled by being asked to be here. I'm very humbled and feel very honored to be on a stage with such wonderful, distinguished people. The names on the wall are important to to different people for different reasons. There's one name on the wall that's right where mine was supposed to be. Served in the Marine Corps in 1969. There was a fellow named James Jenkins. I haven't been able to find him on the panel yet today because my eyes are bad, but I will find him. His name was James Jenkins. And we'd been into it that night. I mean, we got hit just about every night, and I'm not getting into any war stories. I have to deal with it on a daily basis. But I was sitting watching, I just couldn't keep awake. I just couldn't keep my eyes open. So we had this thing that, you know, if you can't stay awake, wake up your partner, and he'll stand watch while you take a little nap. And that's what I did with James. Woke him up, said, man, I just can't stay awake. He said, no problem. He sat up on the side of the hole that was in, and I just crawled down in there. And about not over 15 seconds later, we had mortar rounds drop in, and the next morning I helped load what was left of Jinx onto the chopper. I think about that a lot. You know, if you can find James's name, anybody finds it, let me know where it is, so my vision's not quite as good as it was. Everybody on that wall paid a price, and so did every member of their family, and so did people like you. Just wanted to share that little story and know that each one of those names represents something special to someone. Thank you very much.
We are extremely honored to have with us today Congressman Hal Rogers. Congressman Rogers was elected to Congress in 1980, and he has a history of being able to distinguish what problems and challenges that we face, and then finding solutions for those challenges. He's done a tremendous job for this 5th Congressional District, and he's risen through the ranks in Congress. Now he's Appropriations Chair. I'm sure he would have liked to have had it a little bit different time when the economy wasn't so bad, but still, what a great achievement for a local boy to go on to do these great things serving our country. And he actually served his country in Kentucky and North Carolina National Guard from 1957 to 1964. He has been absolutely amazing, one of the most visionary leaders I've ever had the opportunity of knowing and working with. An amazing gentleman, our 5th District Congressman, Hal Rogers.
Lonnie, thank you very much. Distinguished head table. My old friend Ken Lucas, former Congressman Ken Lucas from Northern Kentucky, we're glad to see him again and see him here. Well, welcome to this ceremony. You know, last Sunday night, when the White House called my apartment in Washington and informed me of the success of a raid that had just concluded that afternoon that nailed Osama bin Laden. It was amazing to me then, and still is even more so now, about the expertise, the courage, and the determination and dedication of those armed service personnel who took part in that courageous, brave, daring, successful raid that took out the man that has been responsible for thousands upon thousands of deaths across the globe in these last years. But it reminds us again of the debt that you and I owe to these people who have served in our nation's military over the years in so many different wars, some not even wars, nevertheless dangerous and requiring of courage and determination. None exceed the valor of these whose names are represented on this wall. Jan Scruggs, who sits beside me here, responsible for the wall. When I first was elected to Congress, thanks to you in 1980, took office in 81, January 81, the wall was being described and discussed. It didn't exist, of course, at that time. But it was the charge was being led by a young fella then named Jan Scruggs. And there were a lot of controversies involved, like everything else. But Jan was the one who carried the torch and carried that dream into reality. There's no one person more responsible for this wall in Washington, D.C. than Jan Scruggs. And as the wall was being first constructed, I was a sophomore congressman, a freshman, I guess, at that time. I sought out Jan Scruggs, and I said, would you be so kind as to give me a little break about how this is being done? He said, come out to the wall and I'll show you. And so I went out there with Jan Scruggs, and he described to me the project under construction, what it would be when it was finished. And then, as now and as ever, as I take tourists and people from home out to visit the wall, which I do frequently, I think it's the most visited monument in Washington. I'm continually amazed at the genius that went into the design and the affectations of that design on the ground. As you descend from the beginning of the war, and as you go deeper and deeper into the war, and deeper into the lives lost in the war, and then finally the degradation as the war began to wind its way down. It's an emotional trip, even for those of us who are not veterans of that war. We somehow sense the pain and the frustrations that actual Vietnam veterans, many of whom, feel. And so this wall in Washington is, I think, a stroke of genius. But it took action, and it took the work of this man among others, but especially Jan Scruggs, to see to the raising of the money, to the design of the actual monument, and the construction of that monument, and to this day even, the care and upkeep and maintenance of that beautiful monument. But of course the monument is more than just a recognition of the people whose names appear on the wall. It's also a heartfelt place where Vietnam veterans can go and feel themselves the valor with which they all fought. And it's a place of great release and comfort and a feeling of sharing in a great and momentous event and occasion that was the war. And so we all today are here to salute Vietnam veterans, especially Vietnam veterans, but all veterans. We thank you for your service. We welcome you into our homes and our hearts. We want your success. We want your peace and comfort. And we want you to know deeply and profoundly how deeply we feel appreciative to your service. We're honored that this wall is here with us in South Central Kentucky, southeastern Kentucky. What an honor it is to have this great replica of the actual wall in Washington here on these grounds and in this area of Kentucky. We wish tremendous success to Jan Scruggs and his team for the purpose of gaining the photographs of the names represented on this wall. He's told me a little bit about his plans, and I'm sure he'll detail them more today. But it's another effort to honor those who served and died in Vietnam. And so let's all be a part of the team now to gather the photographs of these heroes who died for you and me, so that we can more properly honor them even further in our nation's heart. Thank you. God bless you, veterans.
At this time, we want to invite to the podium Commissioner Ken Lucas. Commissioner Lucas represented Kentucky's 4th District in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1999 to 2005. After graduating from the University of Kentucky, Mr. Lucas joined the U.S. Air Force as a pilot serving on active duty in the reserves and in the National Guard, ultimately attaining the rank of Major. He also has an MBA from Xavier and an honorary doctorate from Northern Kentucky University. In his public and private life, Commissioner Lucas has been devoted to education and economic development. Welcome, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you very much. I bring you greetings from the Kentucky Department of Veterans Affairs in Frankfort and from our governor, Steve Beshear. I've done several things in my life, but one of the proudest moments I have is to represent the 339,000 veterans in the state of Kentucky. I did not realize till I got involved in this particular endeavor as to the many wonderful things that the Federal Veterans Administration does for our veterans, as well they should, because nothing should go unnoticed about the valor and the heroism of these folks who gave some the ultimate sacrifice, as those names are on the wall, but a lot of folks that we see out here representing folks probably from a number of different wars and skirmishes, and it's great to see so many veterans here today who pay homage to those folks whose names are on that wall. Again, it's a real pleasure for me to be here, and I really enjoy and honor the position I have of serving the 339,000 veterans in this state. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Nathan Mick. I'm the Economic Development Director for Garrett County, Kentucky, but I also have the honor of representing Garrett County on the full board here at the Center for Rural Development. And I want to thank Congressman Rogers and his staff. I want to thank Lonnie Lawson and his team at the Center for Rural Development for organizing this event and coordinating the display of the traveling wall here for the week. This is actually the only scheduled stop in Kentucky for 2011, so this is a very special and important opportunity for our Commonwealth. But I'm here today to introduce my friend Jan Scruggs. Jan is a decorated Vietnam veteran receiving the Purple Heart and serving in the 199th Light Infantry Brigade in Vietnam. He's also the president and founder of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, which was established and authorized by Congress as a nonprofit organization in 1979 to build and maintain the wall, as Congressman Rogers was mentioning. And Jan was the first person to contribute his $2,800 to the effort to build that wall to honor our veterans and provide a healing opportunity for people as well. And after raising millions of dollars of private funding, the wall was dedicated in 1982. And Jan continues to be a humanitarian, a philanthropist. I had the privilege of traveling to Vietnam with Jan and working on a landmine removal project. He has worked through Congress to have a bill signed into law to build an underground education center at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in the near future. And we are absolutely delighted to have Jan here in Kentucky with us today. So please join me in giving Jan a warm Kentucky welcome, Mr. Jan Scruggs.
Pleasure to be here. I'm assuming weather's always like this in Kentucky. I've never seen anything quite like this before. I've never seen anything quite this green either. Everywhere I go, it's just absolutely magnificent. I want to thank everyone for having me here, for bringing this wall that heals to Kentucky. We're here on a mission. We need the photographs of a little over 1,000, about 1,037 people from Kentucky who gave their lives during the Vietnam War. We have about 275 now, and we've done it in some other states, and you just completed New Mexico. They had 400 photographs, so we need all of these photographs for the visitor center at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which is actually on the grounds of the Lincoln Memorial. Within the visitor center, you will see the photographs of the people who gave their lives in Vietnam, which will change each day. There will also be etchings and photographs of casualties from other wars, some of the 150,000 items that have been left at the memorial, and a timeline of events. This will be a place where people will learn about service, sacrifice, duty, and these important values that have preserved our nation for 200 years. When you go into the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, they have the magnificent words from the second inaugural, in which President Lincoln said, "Let us strive to bind the nation's wounds, to care for those who have borne the battle as we build a just and lasting peace among ourselves and among all nations." Thank you all very much.
We have the wall here through Saturday, and let me tell you a little bit about some of the events we have planned throughout the rest of the week. On tomorrow, Tuesday, we have a wreath-laying ceremony. The event will involve Somerset Armed Forces recruiting officials from all 4 branches, in addition to the National Guard. Participants will speak on the special significance of the ceremony to each branch. Additionally, the event will feature bagpiper Chris Paul, a Vietnam veteran, and a member of the POW MIA Awareness Group Task Force Omega Chapter 6 in Campbell County, Kentucky, where he serves as the state chapter bagpiper. On Wednesday, we have representatives of the DAV and AM vets speaking on the healing nature of the wall. On Thursday, miniature American flag event. Southwestern JROTC members will place 200 miniature American flags donated by Somerset Woodmen of the World Agency around the wall. A representative of Somerset's American Legion Post 38 Honor Guard will speak on the meaning of the ceremonial folding of the American flag at military events. On Friday, public reading of Kentucky and Pulaski County names on the wall, so you will certainly want to be here for that one. Representatives of the local VFW and Pulaski Vets organization will conduct a reading of the names of all 1,058 Kentucky service members whose names are on the wall. Saturday is the closing ceremony. Somerset's American Legion Post 38 Honor Guard will conduct a closing ceremony and full military honors. Retired Navy Commander Derek George will speak on the Vietnam War. Local JROTC students will also participate in that ceremony. So we invite you down for each of those days' activities at noon every day. We look forward to having you back. At this time, I'd like to invite to the podium retired Brigadier General and Vietnam veteran Dan Cherry. He will share with us today an emotional story of healing and reconciliation. He was reunited nearly 40 years after the war with a Vietnamese pilot he shot down in a dogfight near Hanoi, North Vietnam. Cherry, a decorated fighter pilot with the U.S. Air Force, chronicles this remarkable story in his book, My Enemy, My Friend, a story of reconciliation from the Vietnam War. General Cherry.
Thank you, Lonnie, and ladies and gentlemen, what an honor it is for me to be with you today, this very special event. As I think of when someone like Lonnie introduces me and I have the great pleasure to be involved in something this important, I think about how lucky I am as a person. Certainly lucky that I survived 2 combat tours in Southeast Asia, but it causes me also not to ever take that for granted. and to be thankful for everything. As I drove over here early this morning from Bowling Green, I became very, very thankful that I live in Kentucky. What a beautiful drive that is, and what a beautiful place we are in today to express our thanks. And that's what it's all about today, in many ways, to express our thanks. We want to thank those who served in the Vietnam War. And we want to thank those families who worried and supported them so much. And that continues even today. But most of all, we want to be thankful for the courage, the bravery, and the dedication for all those on this wall who paid the ultimate price. I had an Aunt Josephine that was really quite a lady, quite an articulate lady. And speaking of being thankful, she said it just right, and I'd like to share this with you. She said, "I'm so thankful today simply because I am alive. I'm thankful because the world is so beautiful, because the first sharp breath and vivid colors of fall, the first snowfall of winter, the year-round lovely sunsets, the full moon, the way new bundled hay smells, the mood of a tropical downpour, the excitement of a hurricane, the majesty of the ocean, and the grandeur of the mountains. I am glad that I do not take for granted the dry, dusty roads after a sudden rainfall, the first flower of spring, or apple blossoms and dogwood in full bloom. I am thankful for all these things. I'm thankful for those who love me and those who I love. I'm grateful to know that life is important even when it is unhappy. I'm thankful that there is so much good in the worst of us, that man eternally strives upward, and that hope lives in every human heart, even though there may be times of great depression, grief, and turmoil. I am thankful for the variety in people, which adds zest to living and makes every man a potential king and every woman a potential queen, each in his or her own right. I'm thankful for the way I feel when I walk or I sing. I'm thankful for deep sleep and the always new adventure of tomorrow. I am thankful I live in a place where dreams and aspirations and hard work are rewarded. I am thankful because I have work to do which I love. And I am thankful I live in a position to give some help to some of those who need it. In other words, I am thankful to be alive. I am deeply grateful for the energy, the imagination, the hope, the challenge called life. And I will be very thankful if I can live for a very long time. I think Aunt Josephine had it just right. But today is also, along with being a day for being thankful for all the service people who have given so much to our country. It's also a day for healing, for closure, and reconciliation. Many of us as Vietnam veterans were not treated very well when we came home. But that's all changed now, as evidenced by you folks gathered here today and many others around the country, as this wall that heals travels around our country. A grateful nation remembers and honors Vietnam veterans for their service. So healing, closure, reconciliation, moving on from the past, these are all things that I think our lost loved ones would want for us that have stayed behind. And I'd like to share a personal story. And this is somewhat of a war story, but really it's more of a story of friendship and reconciliation. And I hope by telling this story that somehow it can be a help to Vietnam veterans everywhere as they try to bring closure to their wartime experiences. As Lonnie mentioned in the introduction, 39 years ago, I was an Air Force fighter pilot flying the F-4 Phantom on combat missions over North Vietnam. And on April 16, 1972, I was assigned as number 3 in a flight of 4 Phantoms with the mission to hunt down and kill North Vietnamese MiGs. I remember that day very clearly, just like it was yesterday. was kind of hazy in the morning, and we took off very early from our base in Thailand, and we headed straight for Hanoi. As we crossed the border into North Vietnam, all the normal radio signals started from when they started to track us with their radars and in hopes of shooting us down. But our radars were quite effective as well on board our F-4s, and we picked up 4 MiG-21s and intercepted them, and after an intense dogfight that seemed to last forever, we shot down 2 of them. It was an incredible experience, and it will take much longer than I have to explain some of the details, but in a nutshell, in my case, I was fortunate enough to be able to maneuver my airplane to a position of advantage, which in fighter pilot talk means you're in the enemy's 6 o'clock position. Locked on with my radar, fired a missile, and the missile guided perfectly, impacted the MiG right where the right wing joins the fuselage, blew the wing totally off, and seconds later, the MiG pilot ejected from his crippled airplane, his parachute inflated right in front of me, and I had to aggressively maneuver my airplane to the side to keep from flying right through his parachute. We all returned home safe and sound that day, and certainly it was a time for celebration. But it was also a time for questions. As I went through the intelligence debriefing and they asked me all the details you can imagine about that dogfight, it kept coming back to me. I wonder who he was. I know he had a name. I wondered, did he have a family? And did he really live through all that? All these are questions that crossed my mind, but I couldn't dwell on them because in that environment, as you're flying combat missions, the very next day you're up there doing it again. So you're not worried about what happened yesterday, whether it was good or bad. You're ready to move on with the next mission and do the very best you can. So no time to dwell on these more human or personal questions. Now fast forward with me, if you will, about 32 years later to 2004. And it was with this one event that started this whole amazing chain of events that led to this amazing friendship and reconciliation experience. But a group of friends of mine and I traveled and took a weekend trip up to Dayton, Ohio to visit the Air Force Museum. And as we walked through the museum staff came down and greeted us, and one of the members said, you know, there's an airplane that has historic significance to Kentucky and it's not very far from here. And it needs some help. And as the conversation continues, I thought I knew what it was, but then it became evident that that airplane was none other than Phantom tail number 550, the very airplane I was flying on that day, April 16, 1972. And so as we finished our tour of the museum and we started headed back to Bowling Green, my friends wouldn't hear of it any other way. We had to go find the airplane, see what it looked like, and see what kind of condition it was in, and just find it. We knew it was in the little town of Enon, Ohio, and so we drove to Enon. We got out our map and stopped at the local Minute Mart and said, we know this airplane's on display in front of a VFW club. Can you tell us where that is? And they pointed to this road and they said, just go down there about 2 miles and you'll see it. And so that's what we did. Came around a curve and there she was, sitting out in a grassy field, all painted gray now, but somewhat neglected. Unfortunately, the VFW club had lost a lot of its membership and they could no longer care for this historical aviation artifact in the way the Air Force wanted them to. And it was really a bittersweet reunion. Walked up to the airplane with 6 of my very best friends and started walking around her, and it was emotional. It was sad to see her very much what I call a victim of bird abuse. You know what I mean by that? And it was sad to see her tires flat, grass growing up around her, and being all dirty. But she was still proudly serving her country. And she was all in one piece. And I was glad to see that. So all the way back home to Bowling Green, that's all anybody could talk about. What are we going to do to try to save that airplane? So to make kind of a long story short, we did get a lot of local community support. We got permission from the Air Force to take possession of the airplane. We got permission from the VFW Club to give her a new home. And we formed a nonprofit corporation, raised the money, and in December of 2005, Phantom 550 rolled into Bowling Green, Kentucky on 2 flatbed trailers. After cleanup and restoration, she now sits proudly on display at Aviation Heritage Park in Bowling Green, continuing to serve her country honorably. But what about that MiG pilot? What about him? Did he really survive? And who was he anyway? So in the process of building Aviation Heritage Park, restoring the Phantom 550, and doing all these things that a good nonprofit should do, the subject of identifying the MiG pilot kept coming up. And so we decided to launch a major effort to try to do that. We corresponded with people that we knew that had business contacts in Vietnam, people that we knew that had family in Vietnam, people that we knew that traveled there frequently. And we became acquainted with a young lady by the name of Tu Yen, who is a news anchor. She is, I guess, the equivalent of Diane Sawyer in Vietnam. She hosts the nightly news every day. And she also hosts a program entitled "The Separation Never Seems to Have Existed," very much like an old program we had here in the United States years ago called "This Is Your Life." And they take separated people for whatever reason, and they do video profiles on them, and then on live national television, they have a reunion. And she heard about my quest to find out more about the MiG pilot, and wrote me an email, asked me to send her a letter stating my intentions. So I did that. Composed a letter that gave her the date, the time, and the place of the dogfight, told her that I had always been curious about the fate of this man, and I asked her to help in any way she possibly could. It was only 2 weeks later that I received an email from her, and she said, "We have found the brave MiG pilot, and we want you to come to Vietnam and meet him." I was very skeptical at first. But the more I checked into it, the more I realized that this was a very credible television show, and this was a credible journalist, and they truly wanted me to come, and this was the real deal. So in April of 2008, I traveled to Vietnam, and I met for the second time, I guess, Nguyen Hong My on live national television. During that trip to Vietnam, I also met his entire family, had dinner in his home, and began what has become an amazing friendship. After he extended such warm hospitality to me, of course, I invited him to come and visit my country. And in April 2009, Hong Mi and his son Quan came to the United States, and on April 16th, the 37th anniversary of our dogfight, we had the grand opening and dedication of Aviation Heritage Park in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And for the first time in history, a fighter pilot returned from combat to sit in the cockpit of the actual airplane that shot him down. During his time in the United States, 2 things that I wanted to do with him for sure. One was to visit Kentucky's Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which is something that we should all be very, very proud of. And then also to travel to Washington, D.C. and to visit the Vietnam Veterans Memorial there. We were able to accomplish both of those things. We shed a few tears together as we remembered all of those lost on both sides in the war. And as Hong Mi puts it, and the families that were left behind. As Lonnie mentioned, I've written a little book that chronicles this entire story in much more detail than I'm able to tell you today. The title is My Enemy, My Friend, and when it was first published, it was just before Hong Mi first visited the United States. And I wanted him to have one of the first copies. He can read English quite well, and I wanted him to read it, and I wanted him to like it. And as I gave it to him, as he arrived in Kentucky and went to his hotel the next morning, the first question I asked him was, well, how did you like the book? And he crushed me when he said, you know, Dan, I didn't like it. And a little more questioning, I found out what he really meant. And at first I thought he didn't like anything about it. And he said, oh no, Dan, he said, didn't mean I didn't like the book. I just don't like the title. He said, because you know, you and I were never really enemies. We were just soldiers. We were just soldiers doing the best we could do for our two countries. So I hope that hearing this story of reconciliation might help you as a person, whether you're a veteran or not. There are good messages that flow through this. But primarily, and the reason for the book and me standing up here, and this is Hong Mi's view of it too, we want to help Vietnam veterans and their families in every way possible to bring closure to their wartime experience. We want to demonstrate the futility of holding grudges and the need to move on from the past. We want to be an example of the power of friendship for the common good, and we want to be an example to our two countries in hopes that relations of the future might be better than they are today. I'd like to share a poem with you that was written by a young lady by the name of Carrie Philippi, whose father was a Vietnam veteran. It's entitled Reunion, and I think it summarizes this entire experience and story quite well. 2 men at war in open skies, one far from home, one quite close by. They knew not who each other were, each nameless, faceless. 'Twas all a blur. Then suddenly the moment came, the U.S. missile, it reached its aim. One pilot fell right down to earth. The other one, he proved his worth. While 36 years passed on, their lives they lived and dwelt upon, until such time one made the call. Across the ocean, he broke the wall. When great the day arrived at last, they shared a future, forgot the past. American, Vietnamese, two lands at war, two men at peace. Thus hope lives on, for in the end, the enemy once has turned to friend. To all of those names on this wall, I salute you. We will never forget your sacrifice, and we will always honor your service. Thank you all very much. It's great being with you. God bless America.
Thank you very much, General Chair. A few folks I need to thank before we close. Our sponsors for this morning's event: Kentucky Press Association, WKYT TV Channel 27, WYMT TV Channel 57, WBKO Channel 13 in Bowling Green, Clear Channel Lake Cumberland, the Commonwealth Journal, City of Somerset for that wonderful breakfast, and Somerset's Hampton Inn. Give those folks a round of applause, if you will. And a special round of applause, if you would, for all the brave men and women that serve this country each and every day, both those in attendance and the ones still serving. My utmost respect to each and every one of them. At this time, I'd like to invite to the podium Clarence Floyd, and he's going to recite the story of TAPS for us.
The story of TAPS began a long time ago. It began in 1862 during the Civil War. There are many different facets of the taps. I've researched many, and this is what I've come up with, I believe is near the story of taps that I could find. It all began in the Union captain by the name of Robert Elliscombe with his men near Harrison Landing in Virginia. The Confederate Army was on one side of a narrow strip of land. During the night, Captain Elliscombe heard a moan of a soldier who lay mortally wounded in the field, not knowing if he was a Union or a Confederate soldier. The captain decided to risk his life, bringing the stricken man back to his for medical attention. Crawling on his stomach through the gunfire, the captain reached the stricken soldier and began pulling him towards his encampment. When the captain finally reached his own lines, he discovered it was actually a Confederate soldier, but the soldier was dead. The captain lit a lantern, and suddenly he caught his breath and went numb with shock. In the dim light, he saw the face of the soldier was his own son. The boy had been studying music in the South, and when the war broke out, without telling his father, he enlisted in the Confederate Army. The following morning, heartbroken, the father asked permission from his superiors to give his son a full military honor despite his enemy status. The captain had asked that he could have a group of Army band members to play the funeral digs in his son's funeral. The request was partially denied. Well, out of respect for the father, they did say that they could give him only one instrument. The captain chose a bugle. He asked the bugler to play a series of notes on a piece of paper that he had found in his dead son's pocket. Those notes we hear played when we hear taps on every military funeral I know of throughout the United States today, including Arlington National Cemetery. This music was haunting melody, as we know as taps, and is used all over America. It has words. The words to taps is "Day is done, gone the sun, from the lakes, from the hills, and from the sky. All is well, safety rest, God is nigh."
And now here to play taps for us is Dr. Lane.